Welcome. In the previous study section, you were introduced to human growth and development. The section also introduced you to theories and principles of development. You are about to study another interesting section, theories of learning. When you will have studied this section, you should be able to explain briefly the concepts of learning. You should be able to discuss briefly the evolving theories of learning. You should be able to explain the relationship between theory and practice. And lastly, you should be able to identify different types of learning with examples. Let's start with the concept of learning. To the layman, learning has always been a rather simple matter. He sees it frequently and assumes that he has a clear understanding of its meaning. That is, getting to know something he does not know. Coyle, in his book, The Mentality of Apes, explained learning as a perceptual process, with the major emphasis being on the study of relationship and how people learn to see a relationship among various items of experience. Learning of relationship can be clearly seen in the phenomenon of insight. Sometimes pupils work for a long time on a problem or skill with apparently little progress. All of a sudden, there will be a flash of understanding in which the pupil or students sees through the problem or reform its responses into a more complex habit. This phenomenon was first widely publicized by this famous psychologist, Kohler, found that apes, when confronted with different problems, might act as if they were surveilling the situation and would then go directly to the goal object by putting two sticks together, or by peeling one box on top of another. It appears that there has been a sudden perceptual charge in which this animal saw the relationship of the sticks or boxes to themselves and the goal in a new way. I can perceive that you are looking comfortable, indicating that you are finding this course very interesting and understandable. Fine, we must go on. Aristotle talked of learning as an association of ideas following the laws of similarity, contrast, and continuity. He believed that people learn and remember those things that are alike, that are striking because of their difference, and that occur together in space and time. Bogesky, another psychologist, on his own part sees learning as the process of the formation of relatively permanent neutral circles through the simultaneous activity of the element of the circle to be. Such activity is of the nature of change in self-structure through growth in such a manner as to facilitate the arousal of the entire circles when a component element is aroused or activated. Let's see evolving theories of learning. There are so many psychologists that have theorized on theories of learning. Some of them who mentioned here, they are Armand Epigallus from 1850 to 1906, Edward Thorndike from 1874 to 1949, and Ivan Pavlov from 1849 to 1936, whose research on classical conditioning was begun in 1899 but first published in English in 1927. These theories focus on explaining the behavior of individuals and became known as behavioral theories. These theories use a stimulus response framework to explain learning and dominate psychology and education for over half a century. Because behavioral theories focus on environmental factors such as reinforcement, feedback, and practice, they conceptualize learning as something that occurs from the outside in. Different types of learning. One, we have perceptual learning. It means the ability to learn to recognize stimuli that have been seen before. Its primary function is to identify and categorize objects and situations. It changes within the sensory system of the brain. Number two, we have stimulus response learning. This is the ability to learn to perform a particular behavior when a certain stimulus is present. Establishment of connection between sensory system and motor system. And number three, we have motor learning. This involves the establishment of changes within the motor system. And four, we have relational learning. It involves connection between different areas of the association cortex. And five, spatial learning. This involves learning about the relation among many stimuli. And six, we have episodic learning. It involves remembering sequences of events that one witnesses. And lastly, we have observational learning. That is learning by watching and imitating other people.